Welcome to Whiskey Immigrants, a four-year society podcast. I'm Matt Hines. On this show, we'll attempt to break down the invisible walls that many of us tend to construct around the people and things that we're unfamiliar with. We will hear the personal story of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, how and why they came here, their struggles and their triumphs, their views on America, and much more. Regardless of their answers, we hope to give you a greater perspective on immigrants and immigration that goes beyond the talking points and the statistics. Show your support by hitting subscribe or visit us online at foryoursociety.com. On today's show,
Santiago Sanchez, I am 31 and I am from Mexico.
Welcome, Santiago. And what city in Mexico are you from?
Mazatlan, Sinaloa.
Mazatlan, Sinaloa. Nice. Whereabouts is that?
That is in the west coast of Mexico, where Baja ends across.
Oh, so not too far from the border with California.
Yeah. There's Sonora, then Sinaloa. That's the state, and then the city is Mazatlan. If you go like Baja California, the Sea of Cortez is in between, so where it ends. So kind of like where Cabos is at, like around that area.
Oh, that's like a vacation destination, isn't it? A very nice part of the country.
It is.
And I mean, what is day-to-day life like there for people who aren't tourists, people who are just living their lives, just working? For
my family, at least, they live in the country, so they're farmers. And also, on the off-season, they go and fish. So they're fishermen and farmers.
Oh, cool.
In Mazatlan, that's like the big city, so there's a lot. Obviously, it's touristic, so there's jobs for tourism, but for the most part, fishermen and farmers.
Can people make a good living there?
In the city, you can, as with tourism and stuff, but with farming, it's not a huge thing. I mean, you barely make it.
Have you ever gone back for a visit?
I have been back, but it's been a long time. It's been more than 15 years. I was young when I went back to visit. I do have contacts over there, my aunts and uncles and cousins, through like Facebook and social media. That's what's really cool about it, that I get to see them and talk to them through Messenger or... Now,
when you went back, or when people go back for a visit generally, or even just when they leave the country, is it something that's celebrated? Like, people are excited that you're going to America or that you're living in America? Or is it more like, oh, you're leaving us, or even a degree of you're turning your back on your people? Or is it all good luck and Godspeed?
Not really. I think for the most part, people have this American dream that's, in their head. And they're, oh, you're going to like the promised land. That's cool that you're going. Obviously it's sad for some families. Some families decide to split, they send the father first and then, the kids and the wife. And sometimes they go all together. But I think that's the hard part. But for the most part, family understands that, hey, they didn't go up there and they're going to send money back to support us.
So what is the general perception of America? Is it just that it's the land of opportunity and you're going to go there and you're going to be successful and you're going to make it happen? Or is there, they get U.S. news there. They know what's going on and the problems that we have here. It can't possibly be that idealized, can it? A
lot of times is the American dream that people have and die for is an illusion, people trying to make it here. They hear stories of and they believe it, of you get rich off picking up pennies from the street and change, and it's like, yeah, really? They really do come and believe that, and, or they're like, oh yeah, you're going to be making money. But I think it all depends on who's on the presidency, the power right now with Trump, a lot of negative news, and
really?
The view right now has been kind of hey, we'll go over there, but be cautious,
When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense.
Do you think his rhetoric and his policies are deterring Mexicans from coming here?
I don't think it's deterring. It's just making it harder. But I think people, obviously with the news that, with Trump, if you go up there, it's not going to be good. Or
you run some extra risks.
Yeah.
You had mentioned sort of the tragedy of families separating to come here where, the father goes first or whatever. Have you experienced anything like that? I assume you haven't experienced these like migrant camps for children that we're seeing breaking on the news today. But there's also been a rash of deportations, even from people who, thought they were safe under DACA and so on. Have you had any personal experiences along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I've known people that have been deported, like when we're in the United States and they've been here illegally. There was an instance where one of our family friends, he was working and he didn't show up at home, so the family called and said, hey, I heard from him, we don't know what's going on, and they're freaking out, and because they don't let you make a phone call when you get, detained.
Those basic rights aren't extended to you at that point, right?
So it took him like 2 days to hear back. So they got him and they took him and processed him, and and there was that fear. He was the bread maker. So
what?
The breadwinner. Sorry, the breadwinner. Yeah, and
learn the language.
Yeah, sorry. He made bread too. It was really good. He really did. No, but he was the breadwinner, and. The daughters were like teenagers, so when he was gone, they had to they got some jobs. The oldest wasn't illegal, but the two youngest were. So there was that, constant fear. And it creates this insecurity and that fear of like, what's going to happen next? Are we really safe or not?
Did your parents come here legally initially?
No, they came illegally. So again, like the story goes that they call it El Norte, the north, right?
El Norte.
My mom had contacts in Tijuana, like in Baja California, so right over the border from San Diego. So she lived there, and then she moved up. My aunt lived in San Diego, so she started cleaning houses there, and then she just stayed. Because back in the day, you could just cross, and you didn't have to jump. You just crossed the border. And that's how my family came. Like, at least my mom and me asked her, well, how did we get over? So we just drove through. I'm like, what? But yeah, they just said, my aunt was here legally, so she showed hers, and they're all right, come on. Yeah, and then my dad did jump the actual border and cross through the desert and stuff.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way. I think it's amazing the lengths people will go to with the hope of a better life for their family. I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily, but it's a nice thing. Before you guys came to the States, what type of work did she do in Mexico?
My mom, she worked in the farm since she was little. So I think like she only had third grade education.
Did your parents speak the language when they came here?
Mm-mm.
Did they ever learn it?
No, my mom tried to, but she spoke broken English. She could understand quite a bit, but...
Now, you had provided me with a little autobiography that you had written, which was really helpful to kind of get some backstory here. You came to the United States just when you were like a toddler. You were 2 years old. And you write about how, as a child, when living in California, you and your siblings would literally have to go dig through garbage cans to find fruit and vegetables that had been thrown out so you could bring them back home to your mom to cook dinner. When you're experiencing something like that, did you ever have one of those moments of like, this is America? This is the land of opportunity?
No, I think I was, we're pretty young, so like... I think we didn't know how poor we were in that situation, and it's kind of like, I guess this is what people do. We go and, now looking back, was like, whoa, that's crazy. Because my parents got divorced when I was like 6, I think, and my mom became a single mother, and she cleaned houses, and it was, wasn't always a lot of money. So,
right.
We would go to like the Vons and Lucky and different chains over there, and
just see what you can find.
I mean, again, it was kind of weird just to pick out rotten food and cut the bad part, and we're like, we gotta eat that. You're gonna eat it. Like, okay.
I'm sure it was still tasty though once your mom had it all prepared, and I'm sure that she hated that her kids had to go and do that, but it sounds to me like she did her best, and everybody was really pulling their weight around the house. And it wasn't just you, as we just kind of referenced, you have siblings, right?
A brother and a sister, and I'm the youngest, so my brother's 10 years older than me, and my sister's 5 years older, so Yeah, my brother was 12-year-old when he came here.
Did he speak English when he came here from Mexico?
No, he learned it here.
Man, that's got to be kind of difficult to speak one language your entire childhood and then suddenly you're thrown into a world where you don't understand.
Yeah, my brother, like, he got teased and he fought a lot.
Did you ever experience that personally, like when you were in school?
Yeah, we were fighting stuff. Like, we lived in Santiago, in the inner city. Actually, was the ghetto pretty bad. Like, I guess it ended up being the red light district. I didn't know that growing up. I saw this documentary. No, I think it was Forensic Files. One of those shows where they have crime, right? And they're like, they mentioned the road, like the community we lived in, like San Diego's red light district. I'm like, what? I'm all like, it makes sense now. My mom, because we used to walk to school, my mom would be like, don't talk to any ladies if they come to you. Don't take anything from anybody. If they offer you candy, drugs, don't. Whatever, you know. I'm like, it makes sense now.
Well, it sounds like the local industry at least probably kept your mom busy at work, cleaning houses.
Yeah. I think what I experienced, because it's California and it's diverse, you know, like in the 90s we had a lot of refugees from Somalia. We had a lot of obviously Latinos and Asian people, just a lot, Vietnamese. So there was quite a bit of diversity, like the elementary school I went to and the middle school.
Did that kind of multiculturalism surprise you at all?
No, again, because it was normal, but it was, I think where I experienced more of the culture shock was when I moved to Utah. And that was, I think, like 8th grade. That was totally different because there wasn't still a lot of Latinos here. And
Utah's very homogenous, very white.
Yes. And I didn't know I had an accent, you know, so people made fun of my accent and things like that. And I had to learn to really, like, learn how to speak it. But I didn't know that. We didn't know. Like, my friends and I moved together. We were neighbors, and then our families became good friends, and they're like, let's move to Utah. And we had a cousin here, so.
So explain to our listeners, if you can, what is a naturalized citizen, and then what is the path toward citizenship from there?
Well, naturalized citizen is that you have to be a resident for a few years, at least 10, and then you qualify, either renew your residency, or you can choose to do the paperwork. That means you go through the test and everything, the process, and you take the test, and you pass it and give you citizenship. The other one is you're born into it.
And what about legalization for yourself and for your parents, your family? How did that all come about?
The amnesty of the 80s with Reagan, that's actually what really made us legal, because my dad applied. There were certain prerequisites. They did those, and he qualified, so that's how we got our residency. It took about 10 years.
President Reagan did sign the sweeping new Immigration Reform Act today. He said it protects the sacred possession of American citizenship.
And I supported this bill. I believe in the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally. While some keep protesting about what it would do to employers, there is another employer that we shouldn't be so concerned about. And these are employers down through the years who have encouraged the illegal entry into this country, because they then hire these individuals and hire them at starvation wages and with none of the benefits that we think are normal and natural for workers in our country. And the individuals can't complain because of their illegal status. No administration that I know has established the relationship that we have with our Latin friends. But as long as they have an economy that leaves so many people in dire poverty and unemployment, they are going to seek that employment across our borders, and we work with those other countries.
But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. I would be illegal.
In his adulthood as a citizen, Santiago has become something of a model citizen. He's a teacher, and he just became a pastor. But I wanted to get a little more insight from him on those who he knows who maybe have not been so fortunate. Ultimately, your dad and your family went through the proper channels and you got your citizenship and you're safe and sound here. But increasingly we're seeing on the news people who thought that were protected through DACA being deported, sometimes after 30, 40 years in the country. And you mentioned that you've also had friends who were deported. Just for a second, if you can, because you're a bit closer to it than I am, can you put yourself in their shoes? I mean, how would you feel? What would you do?
I think a lot of fear, anger, frustration, I would be back. That's what happened to my friend. But, he came back, but it's just, I would do anything to come back to my family, even illegally.
And what about your friends, the ones who, even if they're trying to do the right thing, fear being deported, they're having those conversations with their family that I might not be here when you get home?
Yeah, they have a plan, like if they don't come back, they're like, you stay with so-and-so and stuff like that. I mean, I work at a school, and you hear more from the kids, just genuine fear, and it's sad to see that, like, they're saying, hey, I don't know, I'm scared to go to school, or I'm scared that if I go home and parents aren't there, what do I do? And one kid told me, because some of them are DACA kids. They're like, we're afraid, Mr. Sanchez, like, what do we do? I'm like, just live and have a plan. Something does happen. And, a lot of kids say, yeah, my parents say if they're not home and they take taken away, we go stay with our aunt. Or
I couldn't imagine being a kid and having that level of anxiety. Like, I can't really wrap my mind around that. I can't imagine that stress. I never experienced that as a kid, certainly, worrying that the U.S. government was going to come and take my parents while I was away at school. How do we allow this sort of thing to go on in this country? Being okay with the government scarring kids like this? It's not happening to little Irish kids, so is this racism? Or is this select enforcement and scapegoating? Like, we've got real things to worry about. But if I make you scared of the Mexicans... I
think it's the second part, like you were saying. I mean, when I was younger, I thought everybody that was white was racist. But they weren't, But it's, I think... And like I don't remember where I read it, but we're talking about, like, the immigrants. When things hit, when the crap hits the fan... we got to find someone to blame. So usually, in every country, they'll blame the minority or someone and say, oh, yeah, it's their fault. I think that's what's happening. Like, and it's encouraged some people that were in the classes racist to come out.
Do you think it'll get better? Do you think it has gotten any better?
Eventually, I think it'll get better. I think we as people, are better than that. And I've seen it, like... the president says something, but you see it, and if you go into our communities, you see we're collaborating,
Right, for sure.
There has been a slight increase of, obviously people getting more courage and saying and being rude and stuff.
Become emboldened.
Yeah, but we can't lump them and say, well, that's everyone. You know what I'm saying? I think if we continue working together as what America is, and I think we come together for the most part, but the media doesn't cover that,
Yeah, no kidding.
They want to divide us, and again, working at our school, we see the young people being influenced. When Trump got elected, kids at our school, elementary and junior high kids are saying, build a wall, build a wall, to our kids that were born here, I think that's when we take that moment to educate, I think that's a key thing.
And you are exactly the man for the job. Tell me more about the school that you're working at. What do you teach? What kind of programs are you running?
I work out in Preparatory Academy, and it's a charter school. It's a Title I school, so... in the community, we're in Ogden, so we have a lot of Latinos. I teach Spanish. I'm going to start teaching AVID, one class of AVID.
What is that?
It's a class that is geared towards middle-of-the-road kids that need a boost to get into college and help, and they learn how to take notes. They have a way called Cornell Way, how to take notes, how to get organized, and also they get tutor help. Once or twice a week, they get homework help, and they have to look up and research colleges. So to make them college-bound and graduate high school, and that's just geared for anybody. It doesn't mean like a certain population. It's just kids that are in the middle that needs that boost, like make them from C to B, average, or A. So yeah, it's a cool program. But I also teach Latinos in Action, which is an organization that is in the schools. It started here in Utah and it's spreading. It's in Idaho, I think parts of Colorado, and in Florida, and it's really booming in Florida. And what they do is an organization that develops Latino students into leaders, and also it has a cultural component. We have a curriculum and what it means to be bicultural and how to become leaders in our community. So what we do is during the school year, we go and tutor elementary school kids in reading and math. So we assign them different kids and they get a tutor. So the LIA students become that tutor to the elementary school kids. And this year we did 4 times a week, and the kids just love teaching those kids and mentoring them, and they form that bond.
That sounds like a pretty cool program. Nice reciprocal thing. Probably makes it easier for the younger kids because now instead of dealing with an adult, it's more like a sibling. And the older kids, now they're invested. For your students who are new to the country, how are they adapting? How are they fitting in?
It takes them about a year to kind of adjust because of the language barrier, but they learn really quick, and again, a lot of times the studies show, we tend to lump with people that are similar to us, so obviously they tend to lump into, if they find other Latinos.
Just that familiarity.
Again, it's just because I think when we come as Latinos, we have the culture, and sometimes there's that battle of like American culture and Latino culture, sometimes they clash. So that's part of our class, learning how to deal with those things, like being Latino and being American, because usually first generation will stick to their culture because
and pass it on.
That's what they know, so they pass it. So with me, like I'm in between, but like I am bicultural and I identify Latino and American. Sometimes there's a clash, but and that's why sometimes there's identity crisis where we have a lot of anger and we're like, I don't know, who am I?
Right.
Because it's kind of like, did you ever see Selena, that movie?
Yeah.
And the dad, that scene when he's all like,
Captain Adama.
well, if you don't speak Spanish perfectly, they don't want you. If you don't speak English perfectly, they don't want you. It is. If I do something that way, oh, were you too American? Then I go to the Americans, well, you're too Mexican. I'm like, well, where am I? Who am I? I'm in the middle.
I think that cultural piece is really interesting, and it's reminiscent of Barack Obama. That would be my relation, trying to appeal to African Americans and seem authentic and real and like an ally to them, while also not scaring away the middle of America white voter, the very same kind of people who actually raised him. And we'll talk about Barack a little bit later because I know that there's a story relating to your mom. But how do you deal with that identity, cultural identity piece?
Is the people that came in my life and helped me, like teachers that stepped in and were that mentor. My friend's parent, like his dad was a mentor. Just different mentors along the way. We need those positive role models. Mm-hmm. And I want to be that inspiration to someone, of a kid that's struggling, because understand what they're going through. Hey, I went through it, you can make it. And that's something that my mom always instilled, education. Education. She said, do you want to be cleaning houses like me and live in this condition? If not, then do something.
Right.
And school is the way. And, she couldn't help me because obviously she didn't read, and that's what made it hard, because, I couldn't go home and be like, hey, Mom,
help me with my homework.
My algebra homework.
That's interesting to think about, how often children of first-generation immigrants are not left on your own, but how much more you have to take on, I guess, than your American-born peers.
Yeah, and then my mom would be like, hey, whatever you need to do, stay after school, get whatever to help you out with homework and things like that to get those grades. She just said, A's and B's. C's okay, but A's and B's, And so that's why I kind of went into teaching, because I studied psychology, minored in Spanish, and then I was like, I don't know, what do I do with my life, So I did youth work, and I still do. I was a youth pastor for like 10 years, and then teaching, I was a TA, and this is my third year teaching, but I'm actually I'm doing the alternative program to get my license, so I just completed everything. I just got to turn in the paperwork.
Man, good for you, my friend. And I love this especially because your mom, she wasn't an educated woman, but she obviously had a lot of wisdom and a lot of decency and tenacity and had a tremendous impact on you. And she was obviously a hard worker, but you also wrote about how, especially once your mother was single, your family relied on free school lunches, the Toys for Tots program, etc. Did that make you feel like, oh, this is kind of a generous country, or like indebted, like you need to grow up and do something with your life?
I think the indebted part, like my mom always instilled in us not to take anything for granted or for free. If someone gives you something, repay it somehow. Like my mom was not a moocher. Like she didn't want to abuse the system, So a lot of times, she would go and apply for things and she wouldn't qualify because she was honest about it. When there was other people we knew that had qualified, but they weren't being honest about it. They were getting all this stuff, and we're like, no. My mom said, no, we're going to do it honest way. And my mom would be like, with the school lunches, like the school programs, she would just be like, just go and get what you need. And then with Toys for Tots, the same thing. Like, she always taught us to be grateful and not to take it for granted, because she's like, you're blessed, you're lucky that you're getting something like this. And
I want to stick with your mom here for just a moment, because she's such an interesting character to me, and she seems like just a strong, wonderful woman. You write about how she got her citizenship in the 2000s and couldn't wait to vote for the first time for Barack Obama, right?
Yeah. She's all like, quiero votar para el negrito, which is, I want to vote for the black guy, you know? Like, all right. Because she was blind, legally blind from one eye and the other. And that was the last thing she did.
Santiago's mother, Maria, passed away the next day after casting her first ballot for U.S. president as a U.S. citizen. Very cool. I think it's safe to say that she made the better life in America for her family that she was hoping for.
She was proud to do that. She nagged me too. She's like, you gotta register me to vote. It's coming up. You gotta take me. Gee, Mom, come on, Mom. So you gotta take me. You gotta take me. And then we got naturalized in 2004. She's like, I want to vote. I want to vote. I'm like, all right, let's go vote. She was proud of that. You know, being a U.S. citizen and gaining that, you know, American dream. And she went to the ceremony, and it was pretty cool to see.
That's amazing.
You know,
Did you cry? Did it make you proud?
Yes.
Was she political growing up? Or was this more like, oh, there's somebody who I can identify with who seems like a decent person. I want to help him become president?
I think she wasn't political. I think a lot of it obviously came from the news, you know, like, and I kind of posted something this morning about the, how we're both, you know, Democrats and Republicans deport people too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both parties do it plenty. It's very bipartisan.
Yeah, but I mean, mostly like, I think her decisions were voted more of like, are they pro-immigrant or not? Especially like in California, when we used to live there, they do have a say, like people boycott businesses, you know, like Cesar Chavez, he did a lot of that, and just further stuff. Like if someone said, oh, this person was being unjust to immigrants, well, let's boycott their business, and you know, people would do that. So my mom, in that way, she was involved.
Cool.
When there was boycotts, she'd be like, don't go to the store today or this and that.
Just a touch of activism in there. That's good, though.
She, you know, like when it came to like political stuff, she really, you know, but she understood, hey, this person is not doing right. Or
well, and I think Obama was the kind of guy that appealed to people who weren't necessarily overtly political, because he seemed genuine and he seemed different. And then, of course, by the time he's finished with his 2 terms, he's the status quo, and we have to replace him with Trump, you know, because he's different.
Again, it was interesting just to the political climate and how it did create some divisions between my friends who they voted for. And
yeah.
I'm like, well, that's cool you voted for that person.
I guess.
You know? It's your choice.
How are you going to pay for the wall?
I don't know.
What do you think about that? Like, honestly, what do you think from your idea of what America stands for, and having also been on the other side in Mexico, what does a wall symbolize to you?
What's the word? Xenophobia.
Xenophobia.
It's just that I think it's an extreme measure. You know, I understand we got to control the borders, but building the wall is not. Even they build it, there's tunnels.
Right? Exactly.
Again, it's just kind of, we rely on immigrants. I mean, if we want our food to be more expensive, then let's get rid of them.
You want to pay $8 for a head of lettuce, you know? And yeah, there is this persistent perception that immigrants are coming here to take your job, when the reality is they're doing the jobs you don't want. They're working the farms, especially if they're undocumented. Alabama tried this a few years ago. Here's Rush Limbaugh celebrating, and then the aftermath.
On Thursday, Alabama Governor Robert Bentley signed an immigration measure described as the toughest in the nation. Now, needless to say, liberals are hysterical over this. ACLU preparing a lawsuit to overturn the law. So move over Arizona. Alabama is in the house right now, and big time.
But when only 5 pickers showed up this morning to harvest his sweet potatoes, farmer Keith Smith saw possible ruin, the loss of his $500,000 crop.
They're running scared because of this new law.
And you're in trouble.
I'm in trouble, bad trouble.
Smith's 200 acres need 20 pickers, mostly Mexican nationals.
There is not enough documented people here to supply that workforce. You want to get rid of illegal immigrants, quit eating. And that's for everybody. That's, nationwide. If you want to get rid of them, quit eating. That'll solve the problem.
It's going to be devastating because I, honest to goodness, do not feel that you are going to be able to get local people to come and do the job they're doing. But if you buy tomatoes from Tennessee, Florida, or wherever, who do you think's picking them? But they're the ones feeding you. They're the ones helping us feed you.
I've got no answer to the immigration so-called problem, but we need these workers here in the United States. I mean, they're part of us now. That's all I can say. They're part of us.
If workers like this keep on leaving, this business and many more like it across the state of Alabama could well go under.
Pretty bad that year. Like I said, a lot of people left, and all the workers left, and people were, they already had the crops out there ready to harvest, so they didn't have anybody to pick them. So a lot of farms lost their whole crop and went out of business because they lost all their money.
You hear these kind of things and you turn on the news and it is upsetting because it feels like Latinos are being targeted, Mexicans especially. And then in the back of your mind you go, well, the U.S. has always kind of ostracized and scapegoat our newest arrivals, whether it be the Irish or the Italians or whoever it is at that moment. Do you feel like it's different now or different being Hispanic and being an immigrant?
I took a Latino cultural class at Weber State, and I don't know if they still offer it, but it was like social problems and Latinos. But there was an article about the difference between other immigrants versus, like Latinos or Hispanics versus other immigrants. With the Irish and stuff like that, all they could do is change their last name and still blend in, If I change my name to Smith...
your complexion doesn't change along with it.
And I think that's been a difference of, you can't change, like you're saying, the complexion, and that's what makes it hard. And there's been people that have been here for generations that don't even speak Spanish, it's culture, they're being here, and they still...
Have you experienced much of that personally? Any overt racism or even just misconceptions about who you are or why you're...
Mm-hmm. It happens once in a while, not a lot, but it does, when... Again, I experienced more when I was here with a culture shock and adapting to kind of being a minority, because in California it's diverse, and, really my only white contact, people, was this guy that lived in a trailer park and he never showered. So that was my perspective of white people. It's like, white people are stinky, they smell weird.
Santiago, you're not that far off.
And my teachers, were white and stuff, but the rest, it was just diverse, and moving to Utah was totally opposite of again, I didn't know I had an accent and people would make fun of me, and, I think unintentional. People would joke, but at the same time, it gets to you eventually, and there was this resentment, and eventually I had to come to peace with that.
Do you think it's worse for the kids now than it was for you then?
I think so. Again, with the political climate, and kids just mess around. Well, they just want to say stuff like Trump this or,
right.
But it still hurts, and it builds this us versus them, and part of our goal is not to do that when I teach. There's a quote that I read that said, be proud of who you are and your roots, but be one with mankind. So I told the kids, be proud of who you are and stand up for what you think, but when it comes to unity, it doesn't matter. We gotta come together and tackle those social issues or the things that are happening around us that we can make a change. We as teachers have influence, and I always try to tell them neutral and look at both sides, I try to teach them to have those analytical skills to analyze things and say, okay, what's the agenda behind this, or what are they trying to say,
And you're a pastor now, too.
Yes.
Take a drink, that's okay. Pastors can drink, right?
Yeah, I just got ordained this month, actually. Yeah, we opened up a new church. Actually, our pastor was on the newspaper this weekend. He had on the Faith section.
Good news, I hope.
Yeah, there was a big, on the Faith section, a big article that they wrote about our church of how we want to reach out and be there for the community.
Do they do a lot of social work within the community?
I'm trying to. Again, we're just barely starting it. We were part of, I used to work at Washington Heights. We were part of that, but they closed down one of the campuses, the Latino campus, so we started our own church. And Washington Heights has really good resource, and they've helped out in the community. I don't know if you've seen like where they did the vest for the police officers in Ogden. They raised up money as a church to buy new vests for the police
like
officers.
Kevlar vests.
Mm-hmm. They also do a thing called Feed My Starving Children, where they make meals for kids where it feeds them for a while, and
I know that church is really well known around here for their community work, for being an active player in the community, and that's always nice to see.
And with us, we want to do something like that, but Latino community, because we want to do that outreach. And when we were there, we were doing outreach to the senior homes and community, and
that's important. What's the name of the church?
It's called the Verb, El Verbo. So in Spanish, El Verbo also, like in the Bible, talks about like the verb being Jesus or action. So we want to be in action, and just like you said, in the community, just helping people and being that resource. Yeah, one year, last year we did like a domestic violence thing where someone came in and talked about that and how to seek help. We want to do stuff like that, where see the need and see how we can help. But we have limited resources. I mean, we're starting from the ground up, like no support. We just, so.
Congratulations on that. Honestly, that's really cool. You write about how, obviously God means a lot to you. And you write about how he sent you many helpers, even in the form of atheists like myself. Not that I ever have done anything to help you, but speak about that a little bit. Maybe morality versus faith. And can you have one without the other?
That's a good question. That's complicated.
Take another drink.
Yeah, let me Huh. Yeah, I mean, we're all on different journeys, right? Like faith-wise, and one thing I learned was, I can't condemn people. I'm not the judge and executioner, I'm called to be a witness, and I believe there's truth, and if people choose to pick it, it's their choice, but I'm not going to go. I used to be like that. I used to be like, go to hell. Don't talk to me. I was like how the Bible describes the religious people, right? Like, and there's a difference. Even Jesus said it's not that. That's religion. It's about faith. It's about spiritual, individual journey.
I think it's great that you have that and that you've found strength from it, and that you have kind of the right approach to it, an approach of love and understanding and community. And you feel like and you feel like it's gotten you to where you are, and that's kind of all you need.
Yeah,
right
it's
there.
like, I believe Jesus is the one that helped, and I've seen it, again, work in our lives. And I mentioned it too, like one of our sociology class was talking about having a sense of a higher power that will help. Sometimes we say God, or sometimes we say a higher purpose, something that can help you along the way to give you that strength to go on. And for me, again, like, yeah, God places people in our lives, and again, like I say, I'm an atheist. I've had people say, hey, I don't believe what you believe, but what you are living, I see that it's real. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you live it. You're not out there talking and being hypocritical.
I believe, that Jesus is the transforming power, and what has helped me with, faith and just trusting, because it's a higher power. I'm not in control. And that's what I like about like true Christianity, that it's an upside down world.
I like that you phrase it that way. True Christianity.
It's just an upside down world of like saying hate, but just said don't hate. We're just damaging ourselves when it comes to that. Like with my parents' divorce, I had a lot of anger towards my father, and I still kind of do, but now he needs help. It's kind of easy to be like, you know what, you didn't help me.
Right.
When I was trash digging,
right. No, that's fair. That's absolutely
fair. That's where faith comes in, like do the opposite. Jesus said, love your enemies.
Santiago has really made a nice life for himself here in the United States. He has a 5-year-old son who's about to start kindergarten, and he's been married for almost 10 years. I wanted to ask him, though, what he thought his life would be like today if his family had never immigrated to the United States. What would he be doing if he still lived in Mexico?
I'd probably be fishing right now, or farming. Probably doing that. Again, it comes back to the American dream or not. Like, they don't have much over there, but they're satisfied. And that's what we're looking for, to be satisfied.
Contentment.
To find, because here we want more, and the latest gadgets. And we all get sucked into it, I try not to, but I do.
Everyone does. It's like this constant need for more that always leaves you feeling empty. I find that interesting, though. Do you think you would have carried on the family business, so to speak? Was your family particularly religious?
Yeah.
Do you think you would have maybe still followed the same path you did here, where you get involved with the church and things like that?
Well, over there, I probably would have been carrying the tradition of Catholicism. But my mom was the one that did convert into like Protestant and stuff like that. I don't know how it would have been. Could have been a pastor too.
Could have been
a Protestant, just different, over there. But I do have cousins and uncles that do have businesses, like they sell ice cream. I do have cousins that work for the health department.
Hold the phone. Do you think your cousin could hook me up with some cheap ice cream?
See,
that's my religion.
Yes, it will melt though. But I have cousins that are teachers and things like that. So I think in the family there has, instilled in the younger generations to get an education. I think there's more of that push now.
So when you go back home or when you talk to people there, well, this is your home. When you go back to Mexico or when you talk to people there, does it feel like people still really want to come to America? Or is the mindset sort of changing more to, let's make this what we want it to be. Let's make Mexico great again. Because there's less corruption. Seems like there's more reforms taking place. Or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think they still want to come. There's still that, hey, I want have a bigger house or better, I guess beans get old after a while, and rice. But I think it's still people wanting to come. I think, again, it's just a little bit more cautious, but people are still coming. And Mexico is trying to get better, but there's also a lot of the cartel things and corruption going on there.
Still, yeah.
This year is a political year, so there's some people that are candidates that are people wanting to vote for them because they're talking about reforming things. But again, it's just rough because last week a politician said, hey, I'm going to go fight crime. And the next day he was shot and they killed him. There's been quite a few deaths of people trying to make it better or at least try to do something and they get killed.
This surveillance video shows Mexican congressional candidate Fernando Puron posing for a selfie with a supporter after a campaign debate last Friday, when a man walks up from behind, raises a gun, and fires point blank at the back of his head. Puron was running on an anti-cartel platform, which made him a target in Piedras Negras, which borders Texas. He's now one of 113 candidates and politicians who have been murdered in Mexico just since last September.
Because of the control and the corruption. So I think people are getting sick of that. So they are rising, and like if you go through social media, they are like getting more involved politically because they're sick of it and they want that change.
It's good to bring up fear of the cartels because I feel like that's probably the primary motivating factor for most folks to come here, to escape that violence and that corruption, to build a safer and better life for their children, for their family.
And this, again, that's another complicated issue, because supply and demand, a lot of it comes into the U.S., and it's not all over Mexico, but there's certain regions that, okay, you don't want to go there. I mean, I do want to go back. I might go within a year or two, go and visit my family and stuff like that, and they live in the rural area, so it's not that bad with the violence or anything like that. With immigration, a lot of times we think of the silver bullet idea of like one solution, and it's not.
Does it bother you, some of the misconceptions about immigrants, especially those who are here undocumented? Like Trump in his first address to Congress said that illegal immigrants cost us billions of dollars per year, when the reality is that millions of undocumented immigrants do pay taxes. It's estimated around $24 billion per year, or that it's not that hard to become a citizen. You just have to get in line. How do you respond to those sorts of comments?
When it comes to with immigrants and stuff like that, because I have a lot of friends that aren't here legally, and the government, the IRS gives them the TIN, the TIN number, right?
TIN, tax identification number.
And that doesn't work as a social, but it works just for a job. So they pay that money, and like you were saying, some of them do pay and file taxes, and a lot of them do. They do get returns. So I think like this year, there was some fear of people going out there and doing that because they're like, oh, well, I don't want to expose myself.
Because they're trying to do the right thing, but that puts them into the system, which could ultimately work against them because now the federal government knows about them.
This year there was a little bit of that fear. And with immigration, it's a long process.
Yeah, it is.
Like, for example, my brother-in-law, he came here illegally, but he married my sister. And it took them 15 years. Finally, last year, he was able to get his residence.
Wow.
But, like, 15 years of lawyers and paperwork and just waiting.
Money.
Yeah, lots of money. And just waiting. Because once you're in the process, you're good. You're protected.
Santiago, I cannot thank you enough for coming in here today, sharing your story, being so candid, allowing us to get to know you and your family just a little bit, and what it's like to not have the privilege of being born here, to actually have to kind of fight and earn your citizenship. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just it boils down to respect and to love. We can have different point of views and still respect each other and be friends. I think just to educate ourselves and to say it's okay to disagree. Sometimes that happens, where just to be able to understand people is, like they say, seek first to understand, then be understood. That's one of the 7 habits. And I think that's what we need to learn. And like Martin Luther King said, don't judge someone by the outward appearance, but by their character. And I think I have seen a positive thing that has come out of this administration has been that people have said, no, we're not like that. We're banding together, and you have that diversity, and that's okay, and we're gonna respect each other. And I've seen that a lot of people coming together and saying, I'm sorry for our president. We're not like that, But like, just I have seen some unity, like people coming out and saying, no, we're not gonna take this, and we're coming together rather than being divisive.
Yeah, I mean, Trump has succeeded at mobilizing people against him and toward humanity and a better world, and against some of the racism and the division. So it's backfiring as much as it's emboldening some of his supporters. Santiago, thank you once again for coming in here today, and
you're welcome.
Thank you for being a great American.
Yes, thank you. I'm proud. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, please hit the subscribe button. You can also support us by visiting us online at www.foryoursociety.com. That's F-O-R, yoursociety.com. On the website, you can catch up on the news, listen to podcasts, check out our videos, and of course, click through our Amazon link, donate via Patreon, or shop the FY Society store, where you can find Whiskey and Immigrant swag, as well as other t-shirts that are mostly of a political nature. Our theme music is from J-Funk. You can hear more J-Funk by visiting jfunk801.bandcamp.com. Until next time, this is Matt Hines with For Your Society.